Stanley dug another shovelful of dirt. He knew X-Ray wouldn't have been talking like that if he was the one teaching Zero how to read. Then X-Ray would be talking about how important it was that he got his rest, right? So he could be a better teacher, right? And that was true. He did need to save his strength so he could be a better teacher, although Zero was a quick learner. Sometimes, in fact, Stanley hoped the warden was watching them with her secret cameras and microphones, so that she'd know that Zero wasn't as stupid as everyone thought. From across the lake, he could see the approaching dust cloud, so he took a drink from his canteen and waited to see who was driving the truck. The swelling on Mr. Sir's face had gone down, but it was still a little puffy. There had been 3 scratch marks down his cheek. 2 of the marks had faded, but the middle scratch must have been the deepest because it was still there. It was a jagged purple line running from below his eye to below his mouth, like the tattoo of a scar. Stanley waited in line and then handed him his canteen. Mr. Sir held it up to his ear and shook it. He smiled at the swishing sound. Stanley really hoped that he wouldn't dump it out. To his surprise, Mr. Sir held the canteen under the stream of water and filled it. "Wait here," he said. Still holding Stanley's canteen, Mr. Sir walked past him and then went around to the side of the truck and into the cab where he couldn't be seen. "What's he doing in there?" asked Zero. "I wish I knew," said Stanley. A short while later, Mr. Sir came out of the truck and handed Stanley his canteen. "Thank you, Mr. Sir." Mr. Sir smiled at him. "What are you waiting for?" he said. "Drink up." And he popped some sunflower seeds into his mouth, chewed, and spit out the shells. Stanley was afraid to drink it. He hated to think about what kind of vile substance Mr. Sir might have put into his water. He brought the canteen back to his hole, and for a long time he left it beside his hole as he continued to dig. And then when he was so thirsty he couldn't hardly stand it anymore, he unscrewed the cap, turned the canteen over, and poured all of the water out into the dirt. He was afraid that if he'd waited another second, he might have taken a drink. After Stanley taught Zero the final 6 letters of the alphabet, he taught him to write his name. Capital Z-E-R-O. Zero wrote the letters as Stanley said them. "Zero," he said, looking at his piece of paper. His smile was too big for his face. Stanley watched him write it over and over again. 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. In a way, it made him sad. He couldn't help but think that 100 times 0 was still nothing. "You know, that's not really my name," Zero said as they headed to the rec room for dinner. "Well, yeah," Stanley said. "I guess I knew that." But he had never really been sure. "Everyone's always called me Zero, even before I came here." "Oh, okay." "My real name is Hector." "Hector," Stanley repeated. "Hector Zeroni." Remember where we heard the name Zeroni before? Remember Madame Zeroni? The one who told what was his name? Elia to carry that pig up the hill that many times. And he never did it the last time. And then he didn't get to marry the girl that he liked. So Madame Zeroni, and now Zero's name is Hector Zeroni. Chapter 28, we'll do one more chapter. After 20 years, Kate Barlow returned to Green Lake. Oh wait, we read this one, hold on. Actually, we're on part 2. It's called The Last Hole. Chapter 29. There was a change in the weather, for the worse. The air became unbearably humid. Stanley was drenched in sweat. Beads of moisture ran down the handle of his shovel, and it was almost as if the temperature had gotten so hot that the air itself was sweating. A loud boom of thunder echoed across the empty lake. A storm was way off to the west, beyond the mountains. Stanley could count more than 30 seconds between the flash of lightning and clap of thunder. That was how far away the storm was. Sound travels a great distance across a barren wasteland. Usually, Stanley could see the mountains at this time of day, but the only time they were visible was just at sunup, before the air became hazy. Now, however, the sky was very dark off to the west, and every time the lightning flashed, the dark shape of the mountains would briefly appear. Come on, Rain, shouted Armpit. Blow this way. Maybe it'll rain so hard it will fill up the whole lake, said Squid. We can go swimming. 40 days and 40 nights, said X-Ray. Guess we better start building us an ark. Get 2 of each animal, right? Right, said Zigzag. 2 rattlesnakes, 2 scorpions, and 2 yellow-spotted lizards. The humidity, or maybe the electricity in the air, had made Zigzag's head even more wild-looking. His frizzy blonde hair stuck almost straight up. The horizon lit up with a huge web of lightning. In that split second, Stanley thought that he saw an unusual rock formation on top of one of the mountains. The peak looked to him exactly like a giant fist, with the thumb sticking straight up. Then it was gone, and Stanley wasn't sure whether he'd actually seen it or not. I found refuge on God's thumb. That was what his great-grandfather had supposedly said after Kate Barlow had robbed him and left him stranded in the desert. No one ever knew what he meant by that. He was delirious when he had said it. But how could he live for 3 weeks without food or water? Stanley had asked his father. I don't know. I wasn't there, replied his father. I wasn't born yet. My father wasn't born yet. My grandmother, your great-grandmother, was a nurse in the hospital where they treated him, and he'd always talked about how she'd dab his forehead with a cool, wet cloth, and he said that's why he fell in love with her. He thought she was an angel. A real angel? His father didn't know. Well, what about after he got better? Did he ever say what he meant by God's thumb or how he survived? No, he just blamed his no-good, pig-stealing father. The storm moved off farther west along with any hope of rain, but the image of the fist and thumb remained in Stanley's head. Although instead of lightning flashing behind the thumb, in Stanley's mind the lightning was coming out of the thumb. We are going to stop there for today. I'll post another one hopefully tomorrow.